is the man who made electric cars a thing and is currently working on perfecting reusable rockets, space travel, connecting the human brain directly to computers, connecting cities with electromagnetic bullet trains. He also tweets a lot. Elon Musk.
One day, John, a wealthy businessman, noticed an unassuming passenger quietly flipping through a book. He underestimated the man sitting in first class, dressed in a simple hoodie and jeans, but nothing flashy. He did not look like he belonged there. Who was this guy? Little did John know, the man he was about to misjudge was a highly successful person. What happened next? A lesson in humility so powerful it left the entire cabin speechless. Stay tuned, because you won't want to miss how one conversation changed everything. The unlikely first-class encounter. Elon Musk calmly settled into his first-class seat on a flight to Los Angeles. Dressed casually in a plain hoodie and jeans, he carried just a small bag and a book. Despite being one of the most famous people in the world, he blended in effortlessly, revealing nothing about his identity. People who passed by or sat nearby never gave him a second look, completely unaware of who he was. His unassuming appearance seemed to contrast sharply with the usual glamour of first class, where passengers often flaunted wealth and status. Elon's quiet demeanor reflected someone who was not interested in drawing attention to himself. He was comfortable with who he was and seemed to genuinely enjoy the simplicity of a private moment in a public space. His posture was relaxed, and he seemed fully immersed in the book he was reading. It was hard to imagine that this ordinary man, with no flashy accessories or designer clothes, was in fact one of the richest and most influential people on the planet. And yet, that was the beauty of it. His wealth and status were not announced through his appearance, but through his achievements and innovations that had changed the world. John, on the other hand, with his confident attitude, represented the typical image of what many people think of as success. Judging a book by its cover, the conversation begins. Across the aisle sat John, a businessman in his mid-40s, dressed in a sharp suit, a designer tie, and a flashy gold watch he enjoyed showing off. As he scanned the cabin, his eyes landed on Elon's simple appearance. Something about it felt out of place in such a high-end setting. As passengers got comfortable, John found himself stealing glances at Elon. His mind raced with curiosity. Who was this guy? He certainly did not look like someone who belonged in first class. John could not believe it. Someone so ordinary sitting in first class just did not seem right to him. His curiosity got the better of him, so he leaned over and spoke to Elon. "Hey there," John said with a grin. "Not to be rude, but first class is not exactly cheap. What do you do for a living?" Elon looked up from his book, gave a polite smile, and replied, "I work in technology and space exploration." John raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Space exploration? Like rockets and stuff?" "That is interesting," he said, trying to sound interested but clearly skeptical. "So, are you part of a small startup or something? Those do not usually make enough money for a seat like this." Elon stayed calm and responded, "I run a few companies. One of them focuses on building reusable rockets." John, feeling both superior and slightly condescending, laughed and shook his head. He did not hide his skepticism. "Reusable rockets, huh? Sounds like a fantasy. Let me guess, you are one of those dreamers who chases big ideas but never actually makes any money." Elon did not reply. He just went back to his book, choosing to ignore the comment. But John was not finished. His voice grew louder as he continued. "People like me build real industries, things that actually matter," John said. "Have been in business for over 20 years. First class is for people like us, the ones who make things happen, not for people wasting money on unrealistic dreams." By now, some nearby passengers had started to notice the conversation. Some looked uncomfortable, while others seemed to recognize Elon but did not say anything. John, however, was still clueless. The overall atmosphere was filled with tension, and it became clear to a few passengers that the man who had been judged so easily might actually be someone important. Feeling more confident, John pointed at Elon's hoodie. "Let me give you some advice, kid," he said with a smug tone. "If you're going to sit in first class, at least dress like you belong. You do not want people thinking you're in the wrong seat." Elon gave another calm smile, his expression unbothered by the conversation. "Thank you for the advice," he said simply, his voice neutral, almost as if the whole exchange meant little to him. John, clearly amused by his own words, chuckled and replied, "No problem. Who knows? Maybe one day, if you work hard enough, you'll be like Elon Musk or someone like that. He is a real genius, not just some dreamer with big ideas." Elon did not respond, but a subtle smile played on his lips. His attention went back to his book, almost as if he was entirely unaffected by John's words. Meanwhile, a few other passengers exchanged knowing looks, and some even whispered to each other, curious to see how things would unfold. The cabin was buzzing with tension, but Elon remained calm. The atmosphere shifted, and there was a subtle but unmistakable sense of anticipation among the passengers as they began to piece together the real identity of the man in the hoodie. As the plane reached cruising altitude, the flight attendant began her rounds, offering drinks and making sure passengers were comfortable. When she reached Elon, she paused and smiled warmly, addressing him politely. "Mr. Musk, would you like anything before takeoff?" Earlier, Elon had politely declined, mentioning that he preferred to wait until after the plane was in the air. John, watching the interaction closely from across the aisle, could not help but notice the respect the flight attendant showed. He leaned back in his seat, his sharp blue eyes shifting between Elon and the attendant, trying to figure out what was going on. The moment of realization. Who is Elon Musk? Unable to resist, John leaned forward again. "So, space exploration, huh?" he asked, clearly skeptical. "You really think that's a viable business? Doesn't seem like the kind of thing that makes any real money." Elon looked up from his book, his features calm and composed. "It is not about making money," he replied evenly. "It is about creating a sustainable future for humanity." John chuckled, shaking his head in disbelief. "A sustainable future? Seriously, that sounds like something straight out of a science fiction film." He waved his hand dismissively, his flashy gold watch catching the light. "Real industries are built on profits and solid outcomes, not on fantasies and idealistic goals." Elon did not react to the comment. Instead, he returned to his book, the faintest of smiles on his face. Around them, other first-class passengers began to notice the exchange. Some exchanged looks and whispered among themselves. A few seemed to recognize Elon, but kept quiet, watching the conversation unfold with interest. John, feeling more confident with every word, leaned in again. "Listen, you have got ambition, I'll give you that," he said, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret. "But ambition without results? That is just wasted potential." He straightened his suit and adjusted his tie, clearly pleased with himself. Just then, the flight attendant returned with a tray, addressing Elon directly. "Mr. Musk, we have your preferred meal ready. Would you like it served now or after takeoff?" John froze. His eyes widened and his jaw dropped. "Wait, did you just say Musk? As in Elon Musk?" The color drained from his face as realization hit him. The flight attendant, with a slight smile, nodded in acknowledgement. "Yes, sir," she said calmly. "This is Mr. Elon Musk." She then turned back to Elon, keeping her professional tone. "I'll bring your meal after takeoff, as you requested." With that, she walked away, leaving John completely stunned. A few passengers pulled out their phones to take discreet pictures of Elon, while John sat in stunned silence, his entire demeanor changing in a matter of seconds. The murmurs among the passengers grew louder as some of them discreetly pulled out their phones to snap pictures of Elon from their seats. John, now flustered, tried to recover. I did not realize. I did not know, he stammered, his confidence completely gone. Elon, still calm and composed, leaned back in his seat. "It is okay," he said in a steady voice. "People often judge others based on appearances. It is a common mistake." John, now embarrassed, let out a nervous laugh. The smugness he had earlier was gone. "Well, I was just joking. You are clearly a brilliant guy, and I really respect everything you've accomplished." Elon nodded politely. "Thank you," he replied, his voice neutral as he picked up his book once again. "But for the record, reusable rockets aren't impossible." John's face grew redder, and he sank further into his seat, feeling every ounce of his earlier arrogance melt away. John sank further into his seat, his embarrassment clear. He glanced around, seeing the amused faces of the nearby passengers. The weight of their judgment was heavy, and he remained silent for the rest of the flight, utterly humiliated. The rest of the flight was quiet and awkward for John, who avoided looking at Elon, who seemed unaffected, continuing to read as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, the other passengers could not resist sneaking glances at the billionaire. As the flight continued, some passengers exchanged whispers and chuckles, while others looked at John with a knowing smile. The tension in the cabin was obvious. As the flight continued, a quiet buzz filled the cabin. Some passengers exchanged whispers, while others quietly chuckled at John's expense. About halfway through the journey, a young woman sitting a few rows ahead gathered enough courage to approach Elon. Holding her phone with a hint of nervousness, she smiled and said, "Excuse me, Mr. Musk. I'm such a big fan of your work. Would it be all right if I took a quick photo with you?" Elon looked up from his book, offering a warm smile. "Of course," he said kindly. "Let's make it quick, though, so we do not bother the other passengers." The woman grinned, thrilled to be getting a selfie with her idol. As she snapped the photo, several other passengers who had been hesitant at first began to line up, forming a small group in the aisle. John sat motionless, his eyes glued to the scene. The earlier air of confidence he had was completely gone, replaced by a strong sense of embarrassment. He couldn't help but think about how foolish he must have looked giving a lecture about hard work and success to someone like Elon Musk. As the group of passengers lined up to take photos with Elon, one of them leaned toward John and whispered, "Can you believe it? That's Elon Musk, the man behind Tesla, SpaceX, and a whole lot more. And you were giving him advice?" The passenger chuckled and shook his head, walking away before John could even respond. John's sense of self-importance had completely crumbled, and the weight of his earlier assumptions about success felt heavier than ever. The humbling lesson learned. Once the commotion died down, Elon turned to John with a calm expression. I do not hold grudges," he said, his tone steady. "Sometimes it is good to challenge others. It makes things more interesting." John nodded weakly, a forced smile on his face. He wanted to come up with something witty or clever to save face, but his mind went blank. Elon's composed demeanor, his kind words, and the entire experience served as a reminder to John that true success isn't about showing off, it's about substance. As the plane began its descent, the flight attendant approached Elon, handing him a small card with a polite thank you for flying with the airline. She addressed him once again as Mr. Musk, making sure that everyone within earshot caught the name. John's face grew even redder, realizing how much deeper his embarrassment had grown. When the plane finally landed and passengers started to disembark, John remained seated, his head down. He could feel the weight of the situation as he tried to avoid making eye contact with anyone, knowing full well he had just learned a valuable, if humbling, lesson. As the plane finally landed, Elon rose from his seat, picked up his small bag, and turned toward John. With a polite smile, he wished him safe travels. John could only give a weak nod, still processing the shock of what had just happened. As Elon walked down the aisle, a few passengers watched him with admiration, while John remained motionless in his seat, his mind racing. John left the plane with a new perspective, one that would forever change the way he viewed success and appearances. For the first time in years, John felt a sense of humility. He realized how wrong he'd been to judge someone based on their appearance. Maybe, he thought, it was not just about the things you do, it was about how you treat others. And perhaps, just maybe, it is a good idea to keep quiet sometimes and not make assumptions about people. The takeaway: don't judge by appearances. So, what is the lesson here? It is easy to judge people based on appearances or assumptions, but you never really know who someone is until you take the time to understand them. John thought he had everything figured out: his suit, his flashy watch, his years in business. But in the end, it was the person he least expected, Elon Musk, who taught him a valuable lesson in humility. Elon did not need to show off or prove anything. His actions spoke louder than words, and that is something we could all learn from. Sometimes, it is better to keep quiet, be respectful, and focus on the bigger picture. So next time you find yourself judging someone, remember, it is not about what they look like or what they seem to be. It is about what they have done, who they are, and how they treat others. Do not be too quick to speak, because you never know when you might be talking to someone who's already changed the world. Thanks for watching. See you next time.